Some may find the following disturbing. Discretion is advised.
Never before in the history of sports podcasts have two men brought you opinion and analysis like these two. They speak for a city that's desperate for wins and titles, not whining and travesty. You might not agree with what they have to say, but you'll defend their right to say it. Sports fans across the world, from Chicago, Illinois, this is the Mac and Reed Show.
What's happening, everybody? Welcome into another edition of the Mac and Reed Show right here on the Barroom Network. Follow the Barroom Network for all the Bears offseason coverage you need at Barroom Network on Twitter and social media in general. Follow me and Ross at The Real Evan Mac and at Ross Reed, respectively. We are live on YouTube right now, streaming on the Barroom Network's channel. Feel free to chime in, all you barflies out there and Bears fanatics. And, of course, if you've missed any of the previous episodes, they're here on YouTube or they are on Spotify, iTunes, wherever you get your podcasts and all your media. Remember to like, subscribe, tell a friend or two, please. We got a lot to get to on the show tonight as we are talking about the Bears hitting free agency pretty hard in 2024. Several key additions since we last spoke, Ross. It really, once the tampering period began, then things popped off. And then just wildness around the NFL, too. What other term can I have for it? But running backs shuffling around, Kirk Cousins getting the bag, some teams doing a lot more than others, the others being the Cowboys. Good God, I don't know what's going on over there in Dallas, but we'll talk about it all at length. March Madness coming up real soon. Surprises along the way, Oscars recap, talk about DeMar DeRozan in the clutch. So many things to chat about. How are you, Ross? What's going on?
I'm good. How you doing? Hopefully,
go ahead.
I was gonna do the old man thing and say the daylight savings, right? They're screwing everybody up this week. You finally adjusted.
My wife is real fucked up from it. She's a broken woman. I'm just like, you know me. Like I can sleep through whatever. It was one bad night where we lost an hour, and I feel like the kids and the wife suffer more than I do. I don't know. I'm fine. It's like we talk about most pre-shows, Ross. You and I are the glue, you know. Kids are sick and wives are sick, and then we are the press on, baby.
We are the rock in our families and the rock at the Barroom Network as well.
That's right, baby. We just repress those feelings and what are they called? Emotions. That's what they are. So a lot to get to, like we talked about, Ross. Let's lead with the Bears, as I alluded to. Looking at last week, they had just started and filled a couple needs as far as extending Jalen Johnson was huge. That was the biggest offseason storyline of players that are currently on the roster that needed to be extended. And, the Justin Fields conversation we'll get to, of course, in a little bit, as he is still a Bear as of today. And Ryan Bates was filling a need at the offensive line. And so just kind of going around the whole free agency additions that they had so far. They got some veteran safety help with Kevin. Is it Byard? I still don't even know.
Byard.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Thank you, Ross. You're keeping me honest over here. So Kevin Byard, coming from the Eagles, some vet safety help. He was a former Pro Bowler. At a pretty friendly, I don't see a big risk in the deal. It's 2 years. I think what about $7.5 million, something like that. And so then you go ahead and you get some quarterback help with Brett Ripien from the Rams, and that was not the quarterback move we expected, was it at all? Several, or at least a few offensive linemen now, in addition to Bates, a couple, I should say, with Matt Pryor, big boy at 6'7", 330, she's offensive tackle who fills a need there, coming from the Niners, and then center Coleman Shelton, who started 17 games for the Rams. Jonathan Owens, the defensive back for the Packers. Simone Biles is very happy that he is now with Chicago. Again, cheaper deals there. Gerald Everett, that was kind of a surprise for me, a free agent tight end. getting signed. I know the relationship with Shane Waldron's a good one, so keep an eye on that. He's talented tight end. He's shown flashes of being really good and athletic tight end for sure. So we'll see where he fits in. A little older, but there's depth. And then, maybe the biggest in terms of the biggest risk, but you could have big rewards here because it was a really deep free agent running back market, but a lot of these guys, they're just a lot of these teams aren't going to pay these guys. And so I'm talking about DeAndre Swift, who comes to the Bears from the Eagles on a 3-year deal, coming off a solid season with the Eagles, earned his first Pro Bowl nod. He had a career high 1,049 yards and 5 touchdowns on 229 carries while appearing in 16 games with 15 starts. Agent Zero, too. I hope he keeps that number. I like that. But, with all that said, they're really all over the place, defensively. Again, filling out that backfield. When you let go Eddie Jackson, you were wondering who would step up and fill the void there. So Byard looks like that first guy to fit in with Joe Johnson, Jaquan Brisker, and company. And so really the offensive lineman, I think that was a positive addition to getting some depth, some vets there. Again, not very risky in terms of money for me. And then the Swift money, it's 3 years and a $24 million deal. What were your impressions? I think a solid. I know you don't like to give grades, but yeah, I'm curious where you're leaning here.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the Bears right now. They brought in a lot of mid-level guys to help fill out the roster right now. I mean, I don't mind the DeAndre Swift deal. I typically don't like paying running backs, especially ones going on their, second, third, fourth teams. But with DeAndre Swift,
you said too.
Yeah, he's still a young guy. He's very productive. With Detroit, obviously, also with the Eagles last year, he brings in, a tough runner. He's a great pass catcher out the backfield. He's going to probably catch about 50 balls in this offense. The Bears are going to go with the true running back by committee with him, Khalil Herbert, and Roschon Johnson, allowing all three of those guys to really stay fresh throughout the game. But also, most importantly, when you go, it's a war of attrition for 17 weeks. I promise you, one or two of those guys are going to go down. And you can probably say all three of those guys have starting running back caliber talent. So, I think it was a solid move for that. I think it was an equally solid move reinforcing the offensive line. They got a true veteran center, right? A guy that has, started a lot there. He knows this offense very well. He comes from the Rams, obviously. That is a Sean McVay, Shane Waldron offense that he's running. So you put in a real veteran pro in the middle there and allows Bates to be that swing interior lineman like we wanted him to be when we talked about him when they traded for him last week. So those are the pluses there. Obviously, another plus, getting Jalen Johnson done. I think Byard is a good veteran safety on the back end who, if you heard his press conference today, he talked about how he knew a lot of how the guys played on defense already because he's watched a ton of tape. He's just a very smart guy. He's going to be a guy that's going to help Jaquan Brisker, I think, immensely. It was great today because I heard him compare Jaquan Brisker to Kenny Vaccaro, one of Byard's old teammates with the Titans. I completely agree with that assessment. I think those guys play a very similar game. Yeah, absolutely. But, most importantly, he's durable. The guy hasn't even missed practices, he said, and he's had a couple kids in during that time frame and still shows up to work every day. And I think that's what Matt Eberflus wants. He wants somebody that's going to be out there for 17 weeks and not miss games, not miss practices, and have the back end of that defense in line. Those are the pluses. Obviously, the minuses, still no edge guy on this roster right now. I think that's still a need.
Daniel Hunter off the board.
Yep, Daniel Hunter's off the board. You saw Bryce Huff come off the board. You saw the kid today from the Vikings go to the Panthers. He was literally supposed to be flying into Chicago this afternoon to meet with the Bears, but the Panthers were able to keep him there. Still some guys out there, if you're interested in a Chase Young or a Jadeveon Clowney, but that feels a lot like the Yannick Ngakoue signing from last year. So I'm a little disappointed with that. I'm also a little disappointed that they have not addressed wide receiver yet, knowing that that's a huge need. I thought Curtis Samuel would have been a great fit, but he signed today with the Bills. but still got a guy like Hollywood Brown out there, the former Cardinal from last year, also former Raven. And, so I think what's going to happen now is the Bears are going to continue to bargain hunt in the free agency market. And they're probably going to take a flyer on some guys who have a lot of talent upside, but probably have some questions due to mostly injuries, right? Let's say it's Chase Young and Hollywood Brown. But because of that, those guys will probably be cheap 1 or 2 year deals. And I think from here going forward, the 4 year deals, those are done with the Bears. At this point, it's filling out the roster, trying to find some bargains. I still think there's some trades to be had out there. So while I'm not completely satisfied with how free agency has started for the Bears, I'm trying to temper myself right now and think logically and say we are still in middle of March.
Yep.
And there's a long way to go with how this roster is going to look before training camp starts.
Sure. You could just look to last year and it went down, again to training camp and right weeks before the season for this roster to be a little more solidified, but they did fill needs. And, I feel like I mentally avoided it just so I wouldn't butcher his name, but they also signed 2 1-year deal linebacker, Eamon Ogbombemiga. That's what I'm going to go with. That's my Chicago pronunciation, who, 25 years old, who played 3 seasons with the Chargers. So again, like a special teams addition there. Do you like Gerald Everett? You didn't really talk about him and his, it's a 2-year deal, but does that do anything for you for this offense?
Again, another guy who knows the offense. He comes from, he has experience in the offense, played with the Rams, played with Seattle last year. I do like the signing. If you're familiar with the Shane Waldron offense, he's going to play a lot of 12 personnel. He's going to put a lot of 2 tight ends out there with 1 running back and 2 wide receivers. So, he doesn't really like to use a slot wide receiver a lot, which is, again, another reason why I'm not completely panicking right now on the wide receiver situation. He just plays a lot of 2 tight ends and 2 wide receivers. And so maybe that, I think right now, if anything, that tips the hand that the Bears are definitely taking a wide receiver in the first round this year. But, at this point, it could be wide receiver edge. It could be quarterback wide receiver. It could be quarterback edge. Like there's still some needs out there. So a couple more things need to come to fruition before we know for certain. But I do like their Gerald Everett signing. Again, it's just a guy that is able to complement. You got a tight end 1 on your team, and you got in Cole Kmet. He's a very productive tight end. He's on a very good team-friendly deal. And what Gerald Everett does is he provides a lot more skills as a blocking tight end and a guy that can still be able to slip out and still catch a couple balls in this offense and be a big red zone target.
There was already a thumbs up, but there's another one from Ross. How's everybody feeling about the Bears free agency start to 2024? Feel free to chime in if you're watching live on YouTube. We didn't talk about the departure too of Darnell Mooney, who we kind of figured may not be coming back, may not fit in with this wide receiver core. You're wanting to get younger. You're wanting to have some other weapons besides DJ Moore when you're looking, immediately at the draft with Roman Duze possibly, and then, the very, very slim chance it didn't go with a quarterback at like Marvin Harrison Jr. But we know that it's probably not likely to happen. I know you don't like to give grades, but I feel like it's kind of like CB range at this point when you are filling these needs, especially in the interior of the offensive line with the again, I think that biggest move on the offensive line is being able to go ahead and sign a guy like Coleman Shelton, who, the Rams weren't world beaters, but they, they had a clean pocket for Matt Stafford to throw in and some good run blocking as well. So that does fill a need right away. You figure that your starting 5 is pretty solid right now going forward. And then, I'm curious to see what the edge market's going to look like, if they're going to look in the draft or maybe, swing for one of these guys who kind of slips through the cracks and gives them a cheaper deal later in free agency. But right now, it's off to a promising start when you're filling these big needs right now. And then you're checking off positionally, like what you would address in the draft with your 5, I believe, draft picks that you have right now into this upcoming draft.
Yeah, I'm still a little disappointed they didn't get into that edge market. Even a guy like Esperanza, he was 2 years, max value of $20 million. I felt like that was a deal that the Bears Definitely could have done, the Bryce Huff deal, 3 years, $51 million. They obviously had the cap space for these guys. You just have to seriously question at this point, what kind of cash flow in the reserves does the franchise have? Remember, it's a franchise right now that gave out $94 million in guaranteed money last year. They have already given out $84 million in guaranteed money this year. That's not even factoring in, a couple other deals that they had and stuff like that. And what looms large over this entire franchise right now is they're trying to figure out the stadium situation. And when you're trying to figure out the stadium situation, unfortunately, that does come into play with the salary cap, because you have to have a certain amount of money in reserves according to NFL rules in order to, you have to have that guaranteed money in the bank. And when you're tied up money in $200 million in Arlington Heights, and Lord knows what they've been able to raise so far in capital for, whether it's going to Chicago, whether it's going to build in Arlington Heights. We've heard a number at the beginning of the week. It was $2 billion. Anyway, a lot of that money has to be set to the side, which means that they're probably working with depleted funds right now. So they didn't really literally have the money to work with a guy like Danielle Hunter. And so, and listen, I'll also say this, and I am somebody that gets that wants to be wild by free agency and see the big splashes and stuff like that. But nobody ever wins a Super Bowl in free agency. Like nobody, the winners of free agency, they don't go out and win the Super Bowl automatically. Jacksonville Jaguars are a team, a name I'm gonna throw out there and stuff like that. We've seen these big splashes happen before, but it doesn't happen. They still need to draft elite talent, and that's going to be what's going to take this roster to the next level. And that's why it's going to be very important to hit on those 2 first-round picks coming up at the end of April and find a way to add some more picks. Right now, they're still sitting at 5 picks. I want them to add at least another 2 middle-round picks to that draft.
Well, and that certainly leads us to the lack of a departure for Justin Fields at this point. And with quarterbacks being locked up left and right around the league that we'll talk about shortly, Justin Fields still a Chicago Bear as of today. And it just certainly looks like the most likely scenario for Fields and the Bears is, barring anything happening within this next month and change, which certainly could happen any day, is that perhaps they draft Caleb Williams and then have him on the roster and keep listening to calls here. And I don't know if it's, with Fields, if it's, if the Bears aren't getting the return they want in hearing these trade requests potentially for Justin Fields, or is it just, is the tape really that bad? Is just the stigma against Justin Fields that bad? Based on the quarterback market, I just can't believe that when I'm seeing, Russell Wilson get signed to a 1-year deal with Pittsburgh, and then Kirk Cousins getting an obscene amount of money. And I don't know, the quarterback movement is just kind of all over the place. For Justin Fields to not at least be given a nod at a starting job is pretty insane. But it's still very early in free agency. I don't know if you had any thoughts about that, Ross.
I have thoughts.
I bet you do.
Yes, I'm trying to stay very, very coy about this. I don't want to completely spill the beans right now on my Justin Fields thoughts today, but I think
give us a taste.
I think I'll do so in the near future. Look, I think that the biggest question surrounding Justin Fields, whether it's with the Chicago Bears or with another team, is compensation. It is he worth a draft pick to trade for? Thumbs up again. Is he worth trading out of the first overall pick to keep? Is he worth picking up a 5th-year option on? Is he worth a close to $180, $200 million contract that inevitably could come soon? And, what's his overall value in the league? And I think that's where a lot of people are going to have a lot of differing opinions. A lot of people are going to disagree. There's a ton of discourse going on literally as we speak right now on the timeline on this very, very subject. And that's why I kind of want to hold back right now on my Justin Fields thoughts and let things play out a little bit more. In my opinion, and it's just my opinion, of course, like everybody has their own opinions right now. I do still think that they're leaning towards drafting Caleb Williams first overall. I still think that they are trying to, or will try to, even maybe not right now, trade Justin Fields and try and find him a place where he can be a solid backup for a season, and then maybe hit the market again after this upcoming season and try and compete for another starting job. I know Eagles have been thrown out there. I've seen and heard some rumors from some reputable people about, Josh Sweat for Justin Fields trade with some pick swaps involved. I've heard some other stuff as well. But I think that we all jumped the gun in thinking either the trade was going to happen or Poles was going to either commit to Fields or trade or trade the pick. Remember, this same time last year, we already knew Justin Fields was going to be the quarterback for next year, right? And even when we've seen in the past, certain quarterbacks that we know are going to be gone off the roster were traded. But also, you got to remember, Trey Lance was traded right before training camp. And Josh Rosen was traded when they drafted Kyler Murray, literally on draft day. He was traded at the start of the second round. So, and they had knew for a while that Kyler Murray was going to be their starting quarterback, even though they also committed to Josh Rosen right after the season. So there's still a lot to play out. And that's why I don't want to have an adverse reaction one way or another on the Fields thing. I want to try and be as even keel as possible and see how this continues to play out, because the fact of the matter is we still could be talking about this for the next 4 to 6 weeks, and it's already been such an exhausting subject.
It's exhausting, but it is still going to, when it's that most coveted position in the league, and the question mark that is, what are you doing at that position between Justin Fields and Caleb Williams, and the future of, the player of Justin Fields, and then what the Bears get in return if they're able to, or if they ride with him. It's just something that we're going to continue to keep an eye on, of course, weekly. But, like Ross very well said, it is so early. It's less than a week into this tampering period, but there's been a ton of movement, and there's still much more that could certainly happen. You talked about the $2 billion that the Bears plan on dedicating to this new stadium and bringing a dome to the lakefront. This is a big pivot from all the talk about Arlington Heights. And that's, I would say the Chicagoan in me is just very pleased with that news, to have the idea of a dome stadium on the lakefront. I think the lakefront is just a great central location for it to be. Obviously the financials of it are still yet to be determined, for them to fund a publicly owned stadium. It's going to be interesting to see how this develops out, and the renderings and who's going to be involved. But this was part of the mayor's one of his big running points, and it was a sticking point, once Lori got out of the picture. I think the Bears really considered it with the mayor and the city of Chicago considering to keep the team, in the city itself. But, of course, they're still on the hook for the Arlington Heights development, which is still, look at this sheer scale of it, like 360 plus acres. It's also appealing too. But, you think about the timeline for it, it's still a ways away. But that's positive news. I was certainly happy. And I know you're a South Loop resident, Ross. You were happy to hear that.
I am. And I, obviously, I'm a city guy. I think everybody that knows me personally knows that I rep city life. I could have chosen to move to the suburbs and stuff like that, and I choose to stay in the city. I love the city of Chicago and the culture and the energy that it has, and the fact that all of our sports stadiums are there. I completely empathize with all my friends and the people that come from the suburbs, and they complain about the parking and how to get to Soldier Field, stuff like that. I get it. I see you. I think all those things need to be addressed if they do in fact stay in the city. But in my opinion, I don't think you can ever be mad if the Chicago Bears stayed in Chicago. They are the Chicago Bears, you know? So, but, you know, like the Justin Fields thing, and even more, it's magnified by 100. We still have a long way to go to see this thing play out as well. You know, there's still got to be a lot of other factors, a lot of other, you know, I's to be dotted and T's to be crossed. And we never know, you know, who's being leveraged here, who's lying, who's this and that. So it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. I think if we started to see some renderings from the Bears and some plans, I know we saw one from Lori Lightfoot before she left, what they wanted to do with the area, but I think that would make it feel a little bit more real. But yes, certainly $2 billion in private money raised for a city location certainly makes it feel very, very real, because that's a lot of money right there. And that tells you that they're closer than a lot of people know.
Yeah, agreed on that, Ross. And it would be exciting, as we talked about in a previous show. Just you think about the potential for still the White Sox future, just to have a stadium on the river as well, and then United Center, just all within miles of each other. But, you know, again, circling back to Justin Fields and this quarterback market, it's pretty insane to think about the quarterbacks that were signed or traded before Justin Fields getting on the move. You had Kirk Cousins, who we knew was going to get paid, Mac Jones on the move, Russell Wilson, who I mentioned on that 1-year deal, Gardner Minshew, Tyrod Taylor, Baker Mayfield, Jacoby Brissett, Jameis Winston, guys like that. And then just, you know, Nathan Peterman, Desmond Ridder, Joe Flacco with the Colts, Mason Rudolph. It's pretty wild, but it's still very early on. Obviously, it's something we'll monitor. Curious to see what the draft board looks like for the Bears right now, and what really they think about digging in on, especially with those first 2 picks that they have. Number 1 overall pick, obviously, you know, it's really leaning towards that Caleb Williams pick at this point, which would just be monumental for the Bears, holding that number 1 overall. Any other Bears thoughts before we shift to the rest of the league?
No, I don't think so. I think, you know, I think everybody right now just needs to take a big collective breath, and let's just see how this continues to play out. And what I would say is, and I put this on my timeline today, if you find yourself speaking in absolutes about things in either way, I think you are doing yourself a great deal of disservice, and you're setting yourself up for an embarrassment, because there's a lot of things that we do not know what can and will happen in the next coming weeks. And you don't want to be the person, you know, like Jay-Z said, you don't want to be put on that Summer Jam screen. You don't want to be the person that gets called out for something that looks so egregiously wrong, but you thought it was so right when you said it. So just be very careful.
I agree wholeheartedly with what Jay-Z said.
Yes.
On to the rest of the NFL, Ross. We've talked about it at length, and it's just pretty crazy the amount of money that this quarterback market is shelling out for a talent in the league. And we know, you know, the player that Kirk Cousins is, but it's still pretty insane that he is. I'm just getting these numbers right. The Falcons signed him to a 4-year deal, $180 million. That includes $50 million signing, includes a $50 million signing bonus. Just unbelievable for a guy who is 35, getting his fresh start in Atlanta. You know, what were your thoughts when we knew that he was going to go, obviously not be with the Vikings, but you know, we were curious. We heard about the rumors with Justin Fields going to Atlanta potentially, but Kirk Cousins to Atlanta. What are your thoughts?
I mean, good for Kirk. Obviously, it's for him to be still making this kind of money.
Already got the ice. Oh yeah,
right. Being at his age, coming off a torn Achilles injury. You know, shout out to his agent. This guy continues to just get Kirk Cousins just a massive bag every single time. I actually think it's a good move for the Falcons, because when you look at that offense right now, they're going to run that Zach Robinson offense, which is a Sean McVay offense. And Kirk is a great quarterback to do that. Obviously, McVay knows Kirk well from the days from Washington where all those guys were together. And so Kirk is going to be able to pick up that offense just like that. And he's going to look very similar to what Matthew Stafford did in that offense. You've got Drake London and Kyle Pitts, and now Darnell Mooney and Bijan Robinson and Tyler Algier on that team. They've got some serious weapons on that offense. You put them indoors on turf, there's going to be some good team speed. It's not a good division. They should be able to win, 10, 11 games this year playing in that division alone. It's probably the worst division in football outside of them. So I think it's a good move. Raheem Morris is the now head coach there, former defensive coordinator for the Rams. He's gonna listen. Falcons, they put themselves in contention. You can call them Super Bowl contenders because they're probably going to win that division just with that move alone. So, and I like the Darnell move as well.
Going from, Jarnell Mooney, a recent addition signing, good for him too. 3-year deal, $39 million deal, $26 million fully guaranteed. Congrats to him for getting the bag. And then you talked about Drake London and the weapons that Kirk will have around him. Ray McLeod, who's a speedster. Kadarius Hodge was re-signed. Rondale Moore from the Cardinals. So he's got some speed. He's certainly going from Justin Jefferson to any of these guys is going to be a step backwards in production, you would think. And before the Achilles, he was leading the league in yards and really just looking like one of the best quarterbacks in the entire league and maybe an MVP front runner. So I'm curious, this all just comes back to his recovery from the Achilles injury. And, if you got the same doctors and mumbo jumbo and ayahuasca like Aaron Rodgers, then maybe you'll be right there. But he, in Kirk Cousins, we've seen him be a stat stuffer before, and I know it just drew a lot of ire from, of course, the guys like Cam Newton because his lack of postseason wins at this point. But this, going back to the money, it's that going rate for quarterbacks in the league right now, and Atlanta desperately needed a quarterback. They haven't had any guy decent since Matt Ryan departed, obviously. And then just last year was a joke with the Desmond Ridder and trying to figure out what to do with him. And then you go back to Marcus Mariota. So for them, I agree with you. It's just a good fit for them and a very winnable division. And you would think that they got to be the shoe-in right now. And it's go ahead, Ross.
Yeah, no, I was going to say, I completely agree with you. And, the postseason stuff, it is what it's football. There's 11 games. There's 11 guys on the field on one side of the ball. There's 11 guys on the field and the other side of the ball. Your postseason success is what it is until you get over that hurdle. We had the same conversation about Matthew Stafford, right? And so, how is he?
A long time, yeah.
Right. Kirk Cousins Kirk Cousins is a good quarterback. He's been on bad to mediocre football teams over the last years. Look at the Vikings roster this year without him. They might compete for a top 5 pick this year. They're going to be terrible. You're going to tell me Sam Darnold is going to go in there and win 9-10 games like Kirk would have. So, but go ahead.
No, I was just going to transition to, I think, there were a lot of quarterback moves that went around. I think that maybe the second biggest was just, as far as sheer talent that we've seen, Russell Wilson, who's and after just the down seasons he had with the Broncos, and we were curious what Pittsburgh was going to do, in their situation with quarterback, getting Russell Wilson to a 1-year deal. Are you for that move? And they have some pretty good talent in as far as the Steelers offense is concerned, but still, I don't know how much Russ has left in the tank here. And I just feel like, given the market, it's a big gamble for them.
It is a big gamble for them because you're going into you've got a playoff caliber roster, right? But you're going into week 1 with Russell Wilson, who is completely, he's definitely not where he used to be, and Kenny Pickett, who just flat out stinks. Right. And I thought that obviously could have been a good Justin Fields team, but when you look at what they got Russell Wilson for, which is basically nothing, he's on a minimum deal. That factors into it. And so, can Russell Wilson be a game manager, right? Can he just hand the football off a lot to Najee Harris and Jaylen Warren? Can he get the ball to George Pickens consistently? They traded Deontay Johnson, but these are Steelers. Steelers are going to draft. They find wide receivers like this all the time. So, they'll be able to add on there and just protect the football. Most importantly is what Mike Tomlin wants you to do, and allow that defense was going to be, TJ Watt's coming back and Mika Fitzpatrick, all these other studs on that defense to just be able to hold form. Steelers want to win games 17-10 every week. They want to play dirty and they want to muck it up a little bit. And I feel like Russell Wilson kind of fits that mold, like those old Seattle days.
Sure. Speaking of 13-10 games, that's all the Denver Broncos were able to produce with the Russell Wilson days, unfortunately. But you talked about that defense was loaded with talent, and Patrick Queen, who played alongside Roquan Smith with the Ravens, got signed to a 3-year deal, breaking up the band, going to the rival Steelers. So that's impressive. So Russ will have some help with this defense for sure. Let's talk about the running backs, Ross. It was a huge shuffle. We talked about DeAndre Swift going to the Bears from the Eagles. Out he goes, and in goes Saquon Barkley from the Giants. Maybe the most attractive running back on the list of free agent running backs. I'm not talking his quads. I'm talking about his talent. And, getting lit up by Giants fans. That was hilarious, by former players as well, for going to the enemy. I like when guys switch divisions. It happens all the time. It's just about getting the bag. But the Giants, having to replace Saquon Barkley, they get some depth with Devin Singletary, who, is a good receiving running back, had a lot of reps with the Texans. What do the Texans do? Then they go and get a Pro Bowl running back in Joe Mixon from the Bengals. He gets out of Cincinnati. King Henry, certainly one of the most talented running backs out there, but getting, into a fight against Father Time, if you will. But he's out with the Titans. He signs with the Ravens, going into a really good offense. Titans getting Tony Pollard from the Cowboys, leaving a big hole for the Cowboys at running back. Ravens move on from Gus Edwards and sign King Henry, as I mentioned. Gus Edwards goes to the Chargers, and then the Chargers move Austin Eckler to the Commanders. It goes on, and can't forget, of course, the Packers. Packers with Aaron Jones, just a beast of a weapon for them last year, but they let him go, and they go for Josh Jacobs. And it feels like we were talking about this. We were curious where all these running backs were going to go and what they'd get paid. But it was just a real big shuffle around of them. The ones that were great all around. I'd say, most of these guys I mentioned were all, over 1,200 yards from scrimmage, something like that. So, who were the ones who landed in good spots, who landed in not so good spots to you, Ross?
Yeah, to me, the Saquon Barkley and Derrick Henry, obviously at the top. I think those are perfect fits for both those guys. I think Nick Sirianni, that offense, are going to be able to use Saquon Barkley both in the running game and in the passing game. He's going to get a ton of passes out the backfield. He's going to be able to rip off chunks of yards, knowing that they've got Deontay on one side, a receiver, and AJ Brown on the other side, and you can use the read option with him and Jalen Hurts as well. I think that was a great fit. I think the Ravens, for what they want to do, which is also keep the ball on the ground, right, and really just slow grind a game out. Derrick Henry is a perfect guy for that. I actually think that they probably beat the Chiefs in that playoff game this year if they had Derrick Henry on their roster. That's how good I think it is. I like the Joe Mixon move. The Joe Mixon move to the Texans, I think that's underrated. I think Joe Mixon has a lot of game left in him. He's a very durable guy. He's been a very reliable running back in his career. He can he can pass protect. He can catch the football. He can run. I think he's going to help immensely that team and CJ Stroud as well. So I like that move a lot. I think the misses for me. I don't know what the hell the Packers are doing. I'm sorry, but I don't think Josh Jacobs.
Aaron Jones go is crazy.
Yeah, and even if you let Aaron Jones go, I mean, I can kind of get that part a little bit, but to replace him with Josh Jacobs at 4 years, $48 million to me is just absolutely absurd. I don't think Josh Jacobs is quite nearly the running back that he used to be. Clearly, the Vegas Raiders didn't think so either because they didn't want to pay him last year. They franchised him. He struggled, I think, a lot last year. They even played the Bears, and he didn't really get it going against the Bears as well. I thought that move was a miss. Also giving Tony Pollard 3 years, $24 million. Tony Pollard, obviously, granted, he was coming off an injury last year, but he just did not look good as well when he was the leading back, the focal back after Ezekiel Elliott left. I thought that was kind of a miss as well from the position. So those are my two big misses from the running back spot.
Yeah, Saquon going to the Eagles seemed like the easy choice for big winner, going to a really appealing offense with Jalen Hurts and company. and getting pretty good money, and then still keeping it spicy within the division there. But then Joe Mixon still relatively in his prime. He kind of got lost in the names, I feel like, of these running backs that were going to be potentially on the move, but fitting into a great Texans offense that's really trending upwards and very young. And then Aaron Jones, that we talked about, just going to the Vikings. I mean, for volume, he's going to get a huge workload. Just I feel like with the just now shitty quarterback situation for the Minnesota Vikings, but you'll have to see him in the same division. He just lights up the Bears. I feel like every time he plays them. It was head scratching to see Tony Pollard, and then Derrick Henry. It goes without saying. Just the Ravens' running game it's just predicated on a lot of run to set up the pass, and Derrick Henry just a bruiser. That'll be very fun to see him play with Lamar Jackson and company. As far as teams that were really turning heads, we talked about at the beginning, the Texans seem to really be building a lot of momentum, and you don't win, as Ross pointed out, you don't win Super Bowls in free agency, but you certainly can build a lot of depth, and defensively, they just did everything right. I feel like when they're signing some D linemen and then getting a true edge rusher to pair with Will Anderson and Daniil Hunter, that's going to be just a ferocious pass rush. I feel like, locking up pretty much all of your potential free agent defensive backs, and then getting Jeff Okudah too. It was a nice addition. And so I just feel like they're really trending in that right direction. The Colts getting Joe Flacco for 1 year, they really just seem to be living on a rental as they figure out what Anthony Richardson is going to be. Wide receivers, they knew that Michael Pittman might walk. So getting him to a 3-year, $70 million seems a bit excessive for a guy like him, but he was pretty much their number one option. They're building around. You talked about Jacksonville, Ross, and kind of making some positive moves. I mean, I think the biggest was Arik Armstead. But I can circle to the division too, because there's so much to talk about. NFC North, the Bears had started off to a good start in 2024 free agency. I think the Lions filling some needs as well. Nothing huge in terms of names there, but Green Bay re-signing A.J. Dillon and signing Josh Jacobs. They haven't made a ton of moves so far. And then Minnesota really just losing their elite quarterback and then signing Sam Darnold. I'm not really sure what they're going to be doing. Maybe looking in the draft at J.J. McCarthy or one of these other guys that may slip out of that top 5 and beyond. Impressions for the rest of the division and the NFL. What did we miss here, Ross?
Yeah, I think it's been a relatively quiet, spending period for the NFC North. When you start looking at a lot of the top 100 free agents available, not a lot of those guys went to the NFC North. The Vikings made a couple splashes on edge. They signed, Andrew Van Ginkel. He was the edge guy from the Dolphins. He was kind of on that list. Blake Cashman, linebacker that played with the Texans last year, had a great run with them. Led playoff run as well. He's kind of on that list as well. But yeah, the Packers have been pretty quiet other than that Josh Jacobs move that, again, like I said, I don't necessarily agree with. The Lions already have a good infrastructure in place. They have drafted very well. They are the poster child of build it through the draft, not through free agency. They have most of their roster returning next year. They're going to continue to stockpile talent in the draft. I don't know what the Vikings are doing on offense. If I'm Justin Jefferson, I'm probably telling him I want the biggest wide receiver deal of all time if you want me to stay here, or else get me the hell out of here. And the Packers are doing what the Packers do. The Packers never make big splashes really in free agency. They're also a team that kind of builds to the draft. They want to, hold on to their money and the resources really tight. So, the Bears still have an opportunity here to make a couple moves in this we're still in the middle of this second wave of free agency to maybe shore up some things and compete for the division. Listen, the Bears, they weren't terribly far last year. They can still make some moves. Again, I'm iffy on him, but Marquise Brown is out there again, right? Like, you need a wide receiver. DJ Reader signed today. He would have been a fun guy to bring on board. But there's some guys out there that you can kind of take a flyer on. I'd take a flyer on even a Chase Young if it's a 1-year deal. That's all nothing more than that. Just see if you can get him healthy. Michael Dana's out there, former Chief guy. Ryan Poles obviously knows him well from the Kansas City days. And then the rest of the league. Oh my God, there's so many moves that have happened.
A lot to keep track of.
Yeah, over the last couple of days, right? I think the big thing is, a lot of the guys were able to get retained. We didn't even talk about Chris Jones getting 5 years, $160 million to stay with the Chiefs. Well deserved. Josh Allen, the edge guy for the Jaguars, got a franchise tag, right? But Justin, Matabuke, 4 years, $98 million. That was well deserved for him. Our own Jalen Johnson, 4 years, $76 million. Antoine Winfield saw a franchise tag. T. Higgins saw a franchise tag, right? Mike Evans got his money as well. And, guys like Michael Pittman got their money as well. So a lot of talent was able to get retained. And now we see what will happen here over the next couple of days, over the next couple of weeks. A lot of these guys, I think, are going to slow play the free agency thing. A lot of teams, I think, are also going to shift into draft mode. We're getting more pro days coming up. That's going to allow a lot of teams to figure out medical situations, see guys up close and personal, talk to them and say, okay, do we want to spend a second-round pick on a wide receiver, or would we rather sign Mike Williams from the Chargers, who is, granted coming off an injury, but he's been a proven commodity in the league? Those kind of conversations are going to start happening.
Some big uglies getting some money too. Looking at Carolina, it's spending a ton of money on protecting Bryce Young or whoever they tried out at quarterback, and then getting Deontay Johnson. That was kind of a underrated start to free agency. Robert Hunt, offensive guard from the Dolphins, getting a 5-year, $100 million deal. That is big money. And then signing Damian Lewis to a 4-year, $53 million deal. I think it's retaining certain quarterbacks too, like Baker Mayfield, I think deservedly getting re-signed by Tampa to lead that squad, and then locking down some of their vets like Levante David and Antoine Winfield Jr. And then, we talked about the Texans, but Dolphins, I think, had, pretty solid start to free agency as well. But it's so early on just to say like, oh, this person or this team is jumping this other team as far as the divisional rankings is just kind of crazy, because we've seen it before. A lot of these signings just may not work out. May just not be fits in whatever system they enter into. Injuries can happen, God forbid, things of that nature. But it's certainly interesting to see, again, the reshuffle within divisions and how this is all going to go down. Exciting stuff. I'm curious to see, what else transpires in the coming weeks, because this is just, again, it's not even Friday. And we've seen a lot of moves. We've seen pretty much all the running backs scooped up, which just speaks to that market and the need for a vet running back in this league right now.
It is. It's funny. I mean, the running back market has kind of rebounded over the last couple of years. It used to be in the toilet. It's kind of popped back up a little bit, but what you see is a lot of these guys, changing teams after, 3-4 years. It's rare to see a Derrick Henry type of run where he was there in Tennessee for so long before he moved on. It's also rare to see a guy like Derrick Henry on my timeline, one leg curling, 75 pounds on each side. The guy is just a massive monster of a human being. So, but to me, what's turned into the new running back market is the safety market. The safety market is very, very down right now. Eddie Jackson, we haven't even mentioned his name. He's still out there as well. This guy's a former Pro Bowl player, as a starter in the league. He doesn't have a job right now. There are a lot of safeties out there that are still looking for jobs. That market is very flooded. Jordan Fuller did get signed today. He's kind of in that safety group as well. But even a guy like Chauncey Gardner-Johnson went back to the Eagles, 3 years, $33 million. I think Eddie Jackson and those guys are going to have to look at 1-year deals and something like that and hit the market again.
How about it? Ross, we're running out of show. Let's go to a few of our quick hits to finish out. Let's transition to the hardwood. And are you ready for March Madness? I'm liking all of these top 5 teams: Houston and UConn, Purdue, North Carolina, Tennessee. It's just around the corner. And then, of course, we'll give Big Ten some love. Illinois, it's funny. I was just watching a recap for those folks who remember us on the radio. We did a remote from Pequods around this time too. That was a good time. But we were talking about you had a segment, Rouse Reed's 2 big things in Illinois, basketball not being relevant at that time, but they've certainly made a good push these past several years. Ayo Dosunmu is certainly the most talented local product to go to Illinois. I feel like of recent memory that helped lead them back to some sort of success. But I'll be rooting for the Illini. Who do you like to take the tournament here of these teams that I mentioned, or some outliers, some underdogs, if you will?
Yeah, I completely agree with you. It's nice to see Illinois relevant again under Brad Underwood, and we haven't really seen it since the Darren Williams days and Luther Head and those guys, right? I was looking. Purdue is another Big Ten team that can obviously make some noise. I think a team that just has pure talent. I look at a team like Kentucky that can and should make a run. I think they're a very, very talented team. It just comes down to, can all those kids mesh well together? And I'll be completely honest with you, and this was something that I was watching even on Sunday. I'm actually kind of watching more women's college basketball than men's right now. And Caitlin Clark with Iowa, how fun she is. That was absolutely just a batshit game on Sunday afternoon between LSU and South Carolina for the SEC championship, 1 versus 2. We saw a little bit of a scuffle that led in some ejections, and a couple players are going to be suspended for that. But I think college basketball on both sides, men and women, are going to be very fun this year. I'm excited. I can't wait. I know we got conference championships this weekend, and then we got the tournament next week. And I think that is going to bring a nice breath of fresh air for everybody for a little bit, to kind of take the minds off this football thing while the rest of the dust gets settled on that side.
Some juggernauts at the top 3 with Houston, UConn, and Purdue, all with only 3 losses. I like UConn. I'll pick UConn to go all the way.
Defending champs, right? They got the pedigree. They know what they're doing. Yeah, absolutely.
Houston, talk about that talent, though. Go ahead, Ross.
They do, but Houston does this, I feel like, every year. It was a team where they had, a Kelvin Sampson Houston team where they were basically at this level a couple of years ago, and they got bounced in like the second round. So, to me, I hate to sound, like a casual, but you kind of have to go with the blue bloods this time of year. You want to go with the teams that have the pedigree and schools that have been here before. I think that matters, even though these kids are young. It matters when Ray Allen walks into the locker room at UConn and he shows off his ring and he says, and Richard Hamilton, right? And guys of that nature, and Charlie Villanueva and all these, awesome, great guys that have been there, and Jim Calhoun's able to walk in and stuff like that. Those things matter to me, as opposed to Houston, who, they'd have to go back to Phi Slamma Jamma and Hakeem Olajuwon and Ralph Sampson back in those days. A long time ago.
Sure. Yeah. Houston and Kentucky types where it's a ton of one and dones more often than not, I feel like, and they're just loaded with talent, but does it last when it counts the most? So you can't sleep on even Kansas, who's, outside of that top 10, which is not normal for them, or Duke, under John Shire at this point.
Sure.
It's keeping it with the hardwood. The Bulls are largely unwatchable, but if you like clutch time, man, and DeMar DeRozan, who just moved ahead of Dwayne Wade, and as far as the NBA all-time scoring leaders, he's at a little over 23,000 points. He just, I don't know, the last I checked was 23,166. And on this season too, most clutch time points this season, he's right behind Steph Curry with 161. It's just Steph Curry and him, which is just insane. Is he a Hall of Famer?
He's definitely a Hall of Famer. I watched that game last night. He had a remarkable game. He willed that team to victory against a good Pacers team. Kobe White got hurt late in that game. He made some of the best clutch shots. You just watch him play, and clearly, he patterns his game after Kobe Bryant. That was one of his contemporaries and mentors for a long time. He wears every single different Kobe Bryant shoe out there, but he passed up names yesterday. he passed up Dwayne Wade on the all-time scoring list, and Elgin Baylor got passed up yesterday, and he's about to pass up some more guys. He's entering close to 30th all-time in scoring. DeMar DeRozan is going to go to the Hall of Fame. He's definitely going to go to the Hall of Fame. It's well deserved. Obviously, he hasn't had the playoff success in his career. Obviously, he got traded for Kawhi Leonard, and then they won a championship. But you can't deny still what he's done, and just the consistency and the durability that he's had throughout his career. And the guy's a true professional. I've never heard anybody say a bad thing about DeMar DeRozan, and that matters.
Yeah, mid-range king, and certainly put the Bulls on his back a lot this season.
Mm-hmm.
Will zip into the play-in game. We'll see. Mm-hmm. Let's end on the Oscars tip. By the way, I saw Dune. Go see it if you haven't seen it. That is just, and just get ready. It was quite the wild ride. I didn't see it in IMAX out of a normal theater, but it was. I can only imagine what IMAX would bring. Very, very good. And on the note of films, we saw the Oscars this past weekend, and big winner was certainly Oppenheimer, and Robert Downey Jr. getting his first Oscar, and a lot of great storylines along that. Shutouts to Killers of the Flower Moon and Maestro. But my special shout out goes to Emma Stone, man, winning her second Best Actress award for Poor Things, which it's in the queue. I will watch it. But she's just, she's accomplished all this. Now that's her third Oscar, highest paid actress a few years ago. She's, an avid Suns fan. She's living her best life. This is all before 35. So only the best is to come for Emma. What else were your Oscars takeaways, Ross?
She has reached like young Meryl Streep territory right now. That's how good she is. I watched Poor Things early on Sunday. I cut it on by about noon and was done by about 2:30 in the afternoon. And after I watched it, I was like, oh, that might be the best actress of the year, because that was pretty damn good. And lo and behold, I was fully all in on I forget her name now, for Killers of the Flower Moon, Lily.
Oh, yeah. Gladstone?
Lily Gladstone, thank you. Yes, I was all in on her, but I just think the screen time caught up with her. She wasn't in the movie enough, and Emma Stone is literally in every single scene in Poor Things. And it's a weird movie. It's a very quirky movie. She took a chance physically with this movie. You'll know what I'm talking about after you see it, and she got rewarded for it. It's a very good movie. Shout out to Yorgos Lanthimos as well, who also had won a couple Oscars for The Favorite a couple years ago, which is another Emma Stone movie as well. Takeaways, shout out to American Fiction, Cord Jefferson. That's another great movie. Has Jeffrey Wright, Sterling K. Brown. Those guys were nominated in it. I thought his speech was my favorite thing of the night, because he was 100% correct. I don't need to see 10 $250 million budget movies in a year. Give me some of the other 30 million, $10 million budgets, some of the lower level stuff. Let's bring back like actual movies, and not something that just has like a 2 behind it, or a 3 or a 4.
Quality story.
Kung Fu Panda 4 and Super Mario Brothers 2. And like, I get it. We need all those things, but I miss those lower level, B level dramas and crime stories and stuff like that. And I think we got that with a movie like American Fiction. So, shout out to him. Shout out to Emma Stone. Shout out to all of the original films that won, and a lot of the non-biopic stuff. As you know me, I'm not a huge biopic person. I think that's taking the easy way out. So I like all the original stories that won as well.
And just going back to put a pin on it, Oppenheimer being the big winner of the night, Christopher Nolan, he's just catapulted himself into that conversation of best directors, and what a story. And Cillian Murphy winning his best actor prize for that. I think they won best editor as well as best picture, obviously, for Oppenheimer. So congrats to the winners, and sorry for the losers. Bradley Cooper getting snuffed out again. We've run out of time, Ross. Thanks everybody for watching, listening in, chiming in. Cliff, shout out Cliff in Florida. Look at that. Feel free to watch this on YouTube after it ends. Again, if you missed any of the previous episodes, the audio-only versions are on Spotify, iTunes, wherever you like your media, wherever you get your media. Remember to like, subscribe, tell a friend or two. Follow me at The Real Evan Mac. Follow Ross at Ross Reed. And follow Barroom Network at Barroom Network for all of our Bears coverage and offseason NFL coverage. of course, throughout the season, as we'll be on Justin Fields Watch and the rest of this team into 2024. But for now, everybody be good to each other out there. So long.
Peace.